Hey everybody, this is David Levenstein, and we are back to business on 103.9 LI News Radio. If you're a business owner or professional, please contact me at my show at jvcbroadcasting.com. That's my show at jvcbroadcasting.com. I would love to hear what you have to say. I know all of Long Island will as well. My guest, of course, is the famous Neil Himmelstein. It's good to see you again.
Thank you, David.
I want you to tell everybody when your show is on and when they can hear it.
My show is the Main Street Code for Financial Success. It's on 3 o'clock every Friday right here on 103.9.
And remind everybody what the code is.
The code is choice, organization, and direction and education.
Right. Now, your company doesn't necessarily deal directly to the client, but you are the support team for many financial advisors out there, right?
Yes, we do some direct to client as well. I'd say about 85 to 90% is financial advisors coming to me to pick out the right life insurance program or to devise the right thing because of people's health or situations.
So you provide the tools and the education that the financial advisors need in order to better serve their clients.
Correct.
Right. And talk about the importance of insurance in a financial plan, because some people separate those in two different planes, and they're really not.
No, absolutely not. Listen, insurance, it protects the foundation of everything we do. Right. I said next to the federal government, we provide more benefits than anyone else. That's what we do. We provide benefits. So if you become disabled and your income would suffer, but we have disability insurance that will protect your income if you become disabled.
Right, and if a family member becomes disabled, your own personal, if they don't have the proper long-term care insurance or tools like that, you can go through your money.
Oh, very quickly.
I know that. It happened in my family.
I know.
My parents were not prepared, and as they got older, as their needs became a little more apparent and obvious in their lives, it ended up costing myself and my brothers a lot because they were not prepared.
Yeah, absolutely.
And interestingly enough, Neil, they had long-term health care insurance.
Right.
And they canceled it because my dad wanted to join a country club and it cost more money. And he goes, "No, we're not going to need it. We'll be fine."
Right.
Not so. How often have you heard that?
Way too often.
Yeah.
Interesting enough, a lot of people don't lapse their long-term care insurance, and that kind of hurt the industry quite a bit because they did not understand the insurance companies when it first became a very big thing to protect this asset with long-term care.
Right.
The insurance companies actually depended on people lapsing their policies, but not only did they not lapse their policies...
Wait, explain that to me. They're dependent upon people lapsing their policies?
Absolutely.
They want that to happen?
Well, they don't want to pay the claims necessarily if they can avoid it.
Yeah, but they make their money collecting premiums, not paying claims.
Correct. So if they like to collect premiums for a number of years. Matter of fact, I heard a commercial this morning that kind of bothered me. I don't know the exact statistic.
Yeah.
But it was a life settlement company. Oh, sell your policy. You don't need it anymore, this and that. So they're saying, only 90% of the policies, life insurance policies, don't pay a death claim. Because people stop paying for them, or they think they don't need them anymore, and they let go of them.
Wow!
And that's why life insurance is so cheap, and term insurance.
So the truth of the matter is,
and I know the real statistic on term,
which
is only
is?
1% to 2% of term insurance policies actually pay a death claim.
Okay, so 1% to 2% of term policies pay a death claim. Right. 90% of the other policies just kind of lapse because they're never used. And as well as long-term care policies. And I would imagine
long-term care doesn't lapse as much for people that take the time out to buy them.
But I would imagine the insurance companies are hoping someone has an untimely death rather than have to activate that policy, right?
Well, right. Well, so they didn't expect. So when they came out with long-term care insurance about 30 years ago, actually, is when it first became prevalent. A lot of carriers came out, and the statistics at that time have changed dramatically. So the numbers back then, they would say 1 out of 3 people would need some sort of long-term care once they reach age 65. 1 out of 3 was the number they had. The other statistic they had, the actuaries, when they put these products together, they thought the average usage would be 3 years.
Right.
Okay? Well, with medical science,
right,
changing and everything else, we're living longer and longer.
Sure.
And some impairments can go for 5, 10, 20, 8 years, So these people that, so they got the numbers wrong.
Listen, Social Security was not designed to pay people 30 years in retirement, 25
Correct.
years in retirement.
Correct.
I mean, when it first came out at the turn of the century, it pays at 65. People died at 67. And that's why we're not running out of money because there's no money going into the system. We're running out of money in Social Security because people are living too long.
And there's too many people, and too many people are drawing from the system than are putting in.
I told my wife that if I live to like 78 years old, I'm going to start smoking cigarettes and eating White Castle and doing everything so I won't be responsible for bankrupting the system.
That's not a great plan.
I know, but it's a plan nonetheless.
And it's people say that. They don't want to go to a nursing home, so I'm going to kill myself before I go to a nursing home.
I'm
and you
not
know
going
what?
to do it. But if I am, I'm going to kill myself with a White Castle.
0.00001 actually do.
Right.
Yeah, it's great in theory, and that is the bad place. That's don't get me wrong. Nobody wants to go to the bad place. And absent of a plan, what happens?
Right.
So what happens is, and I know we have a guest we're going to get to in a second,
Yeah.
but what happens is without a plan, and you need some sort of care in your home, custodial care. Number one, health insurance does not cover that. They don't cover if you need bathing, dressing. They're not covering you. They're covering you if you have a medical issue.
Right.
So any of these other things is where a long-term care insurance company comes in.
Right.
Now, let's say you break a hip. You're gonna need somebody help. How about Alzheimer's? The average Alzheimer's and mental impairments today is over half the claims are due to mental impairments.
It would be nice if there's a product that would combine life insurance and long-term care so that neither of them lapse and both of them are extraordinarily useful.
Well, we certainly have that now.
Hey.
That's where the market is going.
Yeah.
It's very funny you say that.
Yeah, no, seriously.
So the standalone long-term care carriers, I just wanted to get back.
Yeah.
So they didn't predict the numbers correctly, and they put 5% compounding interest and all these in lifetime benefits, and they thought some of these policies would lapse, and they thought people would only use them for 3 years, and all of a sudden people that bought properly have these policies that will drive these insurance companies broke, to be candid with you, because they have unlimited monies going out, and the odds are over 70%, 2 out of 3 people now at reach age 65 will need some sort of long-term care, custodial care in their house. 2 out of 3, and if it's a couple, it's like 85% of the couples one of the people will need it. The odds are like tremendous. So what happens if you need that care? So you talked about A, it's an emotional situation with the families, the children, and whatnot. B, it's a financial situation because it's expensive to bring care into the house, to bring somebody to help. Now, you could say, well, I can handle my partner. I can, if they're in a, guess what? If they're in a wheelchair, okay, you can lift them out of the bathtub. That was the issue with my mother and father.
Yeah.
She could not get that's what started their long-term care adventure. Now, my father and mother had both passed, but taking care of my father actually led to the health decline of my mother, and she passed away, even though she was 7 years younger, 4 or 5 years before my father. And the first incident, what I call incident, my father had a deteriorating back and neck. Even though he was wealthy, he was a veterinarian, he did very well for himself. And, it was before insurance could be bought and all that kind of stuff. But the first incident that occurred was my father was taking a bath.
Right.
And he couldn't get out of the bathtub.
Right.
My mother couldn't get him out of the bathtub, so she called 911. She waited an hour because, houses are on fire, there's other emergencies, where my father sat in a tub, naked. She, got towels and stuff for him or whatever.
That's nice.
For an hour, okay? And they got him out of the tub. Okay, 2 weeks go by, it happens again. This time, he waited 3 hours. Okay? This is a problem.
Sure.
So now we need help. We need help to do these daily activities of living. That's where long-term care comes in.
Okay, so let's discuss it. Now, insurance, long-term care insurance, life insurance, all these things, these are the tools that you provide to financial planners. You educate them. Sometimes you sit down with the financial planners and their clients to better explain how they fit into your investment portfolio.
Correct.
But the nice thing about life insurance is, though, that it's not necessarily part of your estate, right?
Well, if it's set up inside a life insurance trust,
Right.
it can be outside your estate, which means it's an asset that's not taxable at death
Right.
if it's set up in a trust, if it's set up properly.
Right.
Some
So
of the
let-
other great qualities of life insurance, cash value life insurance, is the money grows tax deferred.
Right.
And if you overfund a policy, you could take money out tax-free as well as have a tax-free death benefit. What a great, well-protected product. And to a large extent, it's credit shelter proof
Right.
if you get sued.
Well, you talked about a life insurance trust, which will lead us to your guest. Okay.
Correct.
So I have here with us, sitting in the studio, Cheryl Cazzarato. She is a senior associate over at Kona El Delor. Hello.
Hi.
Hi. So let's talk about. He talked about a life insurance trust, right? So let's talk about these trusts, right? They're going right.
Sure.
And when you hear about a trust and somebody passes on, or a will, or things like that, who is in charge of the distribution of all these assets to make sure that everybody gets what they are supposed to get?
So, first of all, there are various types of trusts. So what Neil was talking about before is an irrevocable life insurance trust. That's one kind of trust.
Right.
There are revocable trusts. There are other types of irrevocable trusts. There are wills. So there are various estate planning documents that a grantor or a testator can prepare. One of the things that they'll include in those documents is they'll name a fiduciary. And a fiduciary is either an executor or a trustee. And that's the person or the institution that will be required to marshal the assets and distribute to the beneficiaries.
Now, how important is it for the insurance documents and the wills and the trust to jive with each other? Because many times people get married and divorced, right? Or somebody dies, or I don't know. And the will says one thing and the beneficiaries of the life insurance policy say something else.
Yeah, I mean, it's important to have everything flow. I mean, you want your testamentary scheme to match. So a trust really only holds the assets that are in the trust. So, for example, you have a house. You would have to deed your house to the trust. And then the trust would dictate who the beneficiaries are.
And the trust dictates who the beneficiaries are based on the will.
Not necessarily. So a will is really for assets that are in your name alone when
Right.
you pass away. So if you own a bank account with somebody, right? It's joint tenants right of survivorship. Typically that's going to go to the joint tenant automatically. That's not going to go through your will.
Right.
If you own a house and the house is in a trust, it's going to go through the trust, not necessarily your will.
So the house will be left to the trust?
The house is owned by the trust.
Okay, so someone passes on, the house is owned by the trust. Basically, they don't even own the house at that point.
Exactly.
Once it's set up.
Once you deed a house to a trust,
Right.
the way I explain it to my clients is look at that like it's almost another person. It's an entity owning your home. I mean, typically you give your client the ability to live there for the rest of their life. They need to pay upkeep and maintenance, things like that.
Is that the same of an insurance policy? Like, can the owner of an insurance, there's the insured and then there's the owner. Can the owner be the trust?
Yeah.
Yes.
That's the
Really?
way it works.
That's the way it works.
Oh, okay. So,
So-
the owner of the insurance policy and the insured is the person who is covered by the insurance.
That's how it
Correct.
stays out of your personal estate because you have that separate entity.
Oh, I
You
see.
don't
Oh.
own it.
Oh.
You don't own it.
So you
This
guys-
other entity owns it.
So you can put the ownership of you can put your house in a trust. You can put your life insurance policy in a trust.
You could put
and then,
anything
and then
in
it
a trust.
removes it from your own personal net worth.
Depending on the type of trust, but in short, yes, that's the plan.
Oh,
So that is tax planning 101. You have to pick the correct type of trust,
Right.
put your assets into that trust in a timely manner, and then boom, when you pass away, no estate tax.
So does that protect you in other things too, like lawsuits
yeah.
or all these other things?
Well, that's the beauty of it. I mean, if you want to give your house to your one child and you know you want that child to get the house,
Right.
Clients say, I just want to give the house to my kid now. I go, no, you don't do that. You put it in a trust. Your kid could get sued. Your kid could have creditors. Your kid could be subject to a divorce. Now your kid owns that house. That's the last thing you want to do. Put it in a trust. Let either you manage the trust if it's a revocable trust, or have your kid manage the trust. And then once you pass away, or once whatever happens that you want to happen, the house would go to your kid.
Who manages a trust when it's an irrevocable trust?
The trustee, and that cannot be the grantor. So let's say you wanted to set up an irrevocable trust. You could not be you could not be the trustee. You're just the grantor.
So who would be the trustee?
Anyone you trust. So it can be an
Hence
attorney.
the word trustee.
Yeah. I mean, it could be an attorney, an accountant. It can even be a bank. I mean, we have corporate trustees all the time, and for example, I mean, you could put almost any kind of clause in a trust. If one of your kids...
but the trustee has to follow certain guidelines, right?
Yeah.
And the guidelines are laid out by the grantor.
By the grantor, and also just New York State law. There's a EPTL. That's our law.
So let's say I want my house to go to my kid, and I put the house in a trust, right?
Yes.
Not in his name. When do they get the house?
Typically, when the grantor dies, I mean, that's usually what my clients do, but not necessarily. I mean, the trustee has the ability to sell the house.
Right.
If the grantor doesn't keep a life estate. And what a life estate is the grantor is able to live there for the rest of their life, or until they decide they don't want to anymore.
Okay, I have a question.
Sure.
Okay. So let's say, Neil, and this is for both of you together, let's say someone puts a life insurance policy in a trust, right?
Right.
Who is responsible for paying the premium to that life insurance policy?
So the grantor pays the premium to the trust, and then the trustee will pay the premium to the company.
Okay, so...
And the trustee is responsible for the performance of that policy and
Exactly.
making sure that the premiums are paid.
And then when the person, the insured, dies, the money at that point, the policy, the benefit will not go to the trust. It will go to the beneficiary.
Correct.
The beneficiary is the trust.
Exactly. The beneficiary is under the trust. So the trust owns it.
Owns the policy.
And they're the beneficiary.
And they're the beneficiary.
Oh, so they have to own the policy and be the beneficiary.
Exactly.
Correct. And then
So I can't have a life insurance policy, let's say, for my wife or for my kid, let's say, right? And then put it in a trust to remove it from my estate. The beneficiary now has to be the trust. So how does that then the money get to my kid?
Your trustee.
the trustee, there's documents within the trust that the attorney...
Will it still be a tax-free inheritance?
Oh, yeah. Inheritance is tax-free.
Inheritance is tax-free.
Yeah.
Over...
There's no inheritance tax in New York State.
Okay, well, I'm not dead yet. But good to know. Okay, anyway, so...
But she brought up another point that I just want to go here. Now, you have to be very careful. If you have a child who has special needs, maybe they're autistic or this and that, and it is your wish to leave that child your house. Mm-hmm. If you don't leave that in a special needs trust, you have a very serious issue. Or if you leave real estate or funds and this person is not capable of managing funds, or doesn't have the mental capacity, or maybe has a drug problem or something else, very important that you draft the right kind of trust. You need the right type of an attorney. Regular attorneys just don't cut it when it comes to special needs planning or special planning that you want to leave to your kids, or protecting that house from losing it because of a long-term care event. They're very tricky stuff, and you need to work together with professionals.
Yeah, I gotta say that if people are listening right now, I know you're listening. If you're listening right now and you think this is something you can do yourself, trust me, you don't. Trust me. You don't want to do this yourself. It's very, very complicated. You have kids, and your kids get married. Then there are future ex-wives and all that kind of stuff that's going on. Everything has to be updated all the time. The beneficiaries on your policy, the documents, your will, and last testament will. All that has to jive with the beneficiaries on your insurance policies. It should be set up in a trust to protect it from creditors, to protect your inheritance. The inheritance to your children from creditors should be a problem there. This has to be worked out, and the people that you need to plan this with are your financial planner, estate planning attorney, people like Neil, who the financial planner needs to rely on, your accountant. I mean, there are so many people that need to be involved, and you don't need to be a millionaire, by the way.
No.
To need to that's going to cause you to have these problems. You just have to have a home, maybe a business, people that you love.
Exactly.
And these are things that why you should need to take care of these things, right?
Absolutely.
Am I lying?
Planning eliminates
lying?
problems.
No, you're not lying.
All right, good. My name is David Levenstein. We are back to business. My guest, of course, the famous Neil Himmelstein from
Main Street Planning Group, and my show is the Main Street Code for Financial Success. I'm on every Friday at 3 o'clock.
And how they can reach you?
631-647-4694 or on my web, mainstreetplanninggroup.com.
And Cheryl Katzerata from Kona Elder Law, konaelderlaw.com. That's CONA elderlaw.com. My name is David Levenstein. We are back to business on 103.9 LI News Radio. Don't forget, contact me at my show at jvcbroadcasting.com. That's my show at jvcbroadcasting.com. I want to hear from you, and all of Long Island does as well, I promise. Take care.
Another one bites the dust. Another one bites the dust.